Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam. Today we'll continue with reading with the chapter 4 of the book Coming Back, Science of Reincarnation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We will continue with the fourth chapter, The Histories of Reincarnation, the subchapter Visitors from Beyond, till the end of the chapter. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail, reads Bhagavad Gita 8.6. As the soul sets out on its mysterious journey after death, it may, according to the traditions of the world's great religions, meet with beings from other levels of reality, angels who help it, or judges who weigh its good and evil deeds on the scales of cosmic justice. A variety of religious art objects spanning the entire range of man's cultural history depict such scenes. A painting on a fragment of Etruscan pottery shows an angelic figure attending a fallen warrior. A Christian mosaic from the Middle Ages shows a grim Saint Michael, the scales of justice in his hands. Many people who have had near death experiences often report encountering such beings. In the Vedic scriptures of India, we learn of the servants of Lord Vishnu who appear at the time of the death to accompany the pious soul on its way to the spiritual world. The Veda also tells of the fearsome agents of Yamraj, the Lord of Death, who forcefully arrest the soul of a sinful man and prepare it for its next incarnation in the prison of a material body. In his historical account, the servants of Vishnu and the servants of Yamraj dispute the fate of the soul of Ajmila, deciding whether he should be liberated or reincarnated. In the city of Kanyakubja, there once lived a young saintly Brahmana. Priest name is Ajamila, who fell from the path of the spiritual world and lost all of his good qualities when he fell in love with a prostitute. Giving up his priestly duties, Ajmila now made his living through robbery and gambling and passed his life in debauchery. By the time he was 88 years old, Ajmila had fathered 10 sons by the prostitute. The youngest, a baby, was named Narayan, one of the names of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Ajmila was very attached to his young son and derived great pleasure watching the child's early attempts to walk and to talk. One day, without warning, the time of death arrived for the foolish Ajmela. Terrified, the old man saw before him the gruesome figures with fierce, twisted faces. These subtle beings with ropes in their hands and come to forcibly escort him to the court of Yamraj, the Lord of Death. Seeing these ghoulish creatures, Ajmela became bewildered, and out of the affection for his beloved child, who was playing a short distance away, he began to cry loudly, Narayana, Narayana. With tears in his eyes, weeping for his young son, the great sinner Ajmela unconsciously chanted the holy name of the Lord. Hearing their master's name chanted with great feeling by the dying Ajmela, the order carriers of Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, arrived within a second. They appeared just like Lord Vishnu himself. Their eyes were exactly like the petals of a lotus flower. They wore helmets of varnished gold, glimmering silk garments the color of topaz, and their perfectly formed bodies were decorated with garlands of sapphire and milk white lotuses. They appeared fresh and youthful, and their dazzling effulgence illuminated the darkness of the death chamber. In their hands they held bows, arrows, swords, conch shells, clubs, discs, and lotus flowers. The Vishnu Dutas saw the servants of Yamraj, the Yamdutas, snatching Ajmela's son, soul from the core of the heart, and with resounding voices they cried, Stop! The Yamdutas, who had never before encountered any opposition, trembled upon hearing the Vishnu Duta's harsh command. Who are you? Why are you trying to stop us? They asked. We are the servants of Yamraj, the Lord of Death. The agents of Vishnu smiled and spoke in voices as deep as the rumbling of the rain clouds. If you are truly the servants of Yamraj, you must explain to us the meaning of the cycle of the birth and death. Tell us who must enter this cycle and who must not. The Yamaduta replied, the sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, the directions, water, land, and the supersoul, or the Lord within the heart, all witness the activities of everyone. The candidates for punishment in the cycle of birth and death are those who are confirmed by these witnesses to have deviated from their religious duties. In proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious actions in his life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of karma in the next. Originally, the living beings exist in the spiritual world as eternal servants of God. But when they give up the service of Lord, they must enter the material universe, comprised of three modes of nature: the goodness, the passion, and the ignorance. The Yamdutas explained that the living beings who desire to enjoy this material world come under the control of the modes, and according to their specific relationship with these modes, acquire suitable material bodies. A being in the mode of goodness obtains the body of a demigod, one in the mode of passion takes birth as a human, and one in the mode of ignorance enters the lower species. All of these bodies are like the bodies we experience in dreams. When a man goes to sleep, he forgets his real identity and may dream that he has become a king. He cannot remember what he was doing before he went to sleep, nor can he imagine what he will do upon waking. In the same way, when a soul identifies with a temporary material body, he forgets his real spiritual identity as well as any previous lives in the material world. Although most souls in a human body have already transmigrated through all 84 lakh species of life, the living entity thus transmigrates from one material body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. The Yamduta said, when the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is very happy. When he gets a human body, he is sometimes happy and sometimes sad. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always fearful. In all conditions, however, he suffers terribly, experiences birth, death, disease, and old age. His miserable condition is called as samsara or transmigration of the soul through different species of material life. The foolish embodied living entity, the Yamdutas continued, unable to control his senses or his mind, is forced to act according to the influence of the mode of the material nature, even against his own desires. He is like a silkworm that uses its own saliva to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to free himself. Thus, he is always bewildered and repeatedly dies and is reborn. Because of his intense material desires, said the Yamdutas, a living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body like that of either the mother or the father. That body is an indication of his past and future bodies, just as one's springtime is an indication of past and future springtimes. The human form of life is especially valuable because only a human can understand the transcendental knowledge that can free him from the cycle of birth and death. But Ajmila had wasted his human life. In the beginning, the Yamaduta said, Ajmela studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character and conduct. He was very mild and gentle, and he kept his mind and senses under control. He was always truthful, knew how to chant the Vedic mantra, and was very pure. Ajmela always showed proper respect to his spiritual master, guest, and the elderly members of his household. Indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was benevolent to all living beings and never envied anyone. But once Ajmila, following the order of his father, went to the forest to collect fruits and flowers. On the way home, he came upon a very lusty, low-class man shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The man was smiling, singing, and enjoying himself as if this were proper behavior. Both the man and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose, partially exposing her body. When Ajmila saw this prostitute, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. He tried to remember the instructions of the scriptures, and with the help of his knowledge and intellect, he tried to control his lust. But because tried to control his lust, but because of the force of the Cupid within his heart, he was unable to control his mind. After that, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time, he took her in as a servant in his house. Ajmela then gave up all of his spiritual practices. He went, spent the money he had inherited from his father for the presents for the prostitute, and even rejected his beautiful young wife, who came from a respectable Brahmana family. This rascal Ajmela got money any way he could, legally or illegally, and used it to maintain the prostitutes' sons and daughters. Before that, he did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him to the court of Yamraj. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and then return to the material world in a suitable body. After hearing the statements of the Yamduts, the servants of Lord Vishnu, who are always expert in logic and argument, replied, "How painful it is to see that those in charge of upholding religious principles are needlessly punishing an innocent person. Ajmela had already atoned for all of his sins. Indeed, he had atoned not for only for sins performed in his life, but for those performed in millions of previous lives as well, because he chanted the holy name of Narayan in a helpless state of mind at the time of his death. Therefore, he is now pure and eligible for liberation from the cycle of reincarnation." The chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dut said, is the best process of atonement for a thief or a drunkard, for one who betrays a friend or relative, for one who kills a priest, or for one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It is also the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king, or his father, for one who slaughters cows, and for all other sinful men. Simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, such sinful persons may attract the attention of the Supreme Lord, who therefore considers, because this man has chanted my holy name, it is my duty to give him protection. In this present age of quarrel and hypocrisy, one who wants liberation from reincarnation should chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the great mantra of deliverance, because it completely cleanses the heart of all material desires that keep one trapped in the cycle of birth and death. The Vishnuduta said, "One who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, even if he chants jokingly or for musical entertainment. This is accepted in the scriptures and by all learned scholars. If one chants the holy name of Lord Krishna and then dies in an accident or is killed by a deadly animal from disease or by a weapon, one is immediately freed from having to take birth again. As a fire burns dry grass to ashes, the holy name of Krishna burns to ashes all of one's karmic reactions. The Vishnudutas then said, "If a person unaware of the potency of a medicine takes that medicine or is forced to take it, it will act even without his knowledge. Even if one does not know the value of chanting the holy name of the Lord, the chanting will still be effective in liberating one from reincarnation." At the time of death, said the Vishnu Dutas, Ajmela helplessly and very loudly chanted the holy name of Lord Narayan. That chanting alone has already freed him from having to take birth again for his sinful life. Therefore, do not try to take him to your master for punishment by another term of imprisonment in a material body. The Vishnudutas then released Ajmela from the ropes of the servants of the Lord of Death. Ajmela came to his senses and, free from fear, paid his respects to the Vishnudutas by bowing his head at their feet. But then the Vishnudutas saw that Ajmela was trying to say something to them. They disappeared. Was this a dream I saw? Ajmela wondered. Or was it a reality? I saw fearsome men with ropes in their hands coming to drag me away. Where have they gone? And where are those four radiant persons who saved me? Ajmela then began to reflect on his life. Being a servant of my senses, how degraded I became. I fell down from my position as a saintly Brahman and begot children in the womb of a prostitute. Indeed, I gave up my chaste and beautiful young wife. What's more, my father and mother were old and had no other friend or son to look after them. Because I did not take care of them, they lived with great pain and difficulty. It is now clear that a sinful person like myself should have been forced in his next life to suffer hellishly. I am such an unfortunate person, said Ajmela. But how now that I have another chance, I must try to become free from the vicious circle of birth and death. Ajmela immediately renounced his prostitute wife and journeyed to Hardwar, a place of pilgrimage in the Himalaya mountains. There he took shelter at the Vishnu temple where he practiced bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. When his mind and intelligence were fixed in perfect meditation in the form of the Lord, Ajmela again saw before him the celestial beings. Recognizing them as the same Vishnu Dutas who had saved him from the agents of death, he bowed down before them. There at Hardwar on the banks of the Ganges, Ajmela gave up his temporary material body and regained his eternal spiritual form. Accompanied by the Vishnu Dutas, he boarded a golden aircraft and passing through the airways went directly to the abode of Lord Vishnu, never again to reincarnate in this material world. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.